Bum bum banana. No diggity. Hello, no. How are you? Oh my goodness. To what do I owe this distinct pleasure? Distinct pleasure. I'm trying to figure out this Zoom thing, but we'll figure it out. Either it'll work or it won't. That's the beauty of life. It either works or it doesn't. Let me move these words out of my face. Let me move these words out of my face. Bum, bum, bum. All right, we can put this right over here. Boop, boop. Good morning. What's up, butterflies? What's up, butterflies? What's up, butterflies? I need coffee so bad. So bad. Actually, let me go ahead and cover this until Lee's able to join us. Good morning to everybody. How are you? How are you? Neil, are you here too? Fantastic. Yeah, so this morning, we have a very special wake and bake this morning. Very special. Very. In moments from now, who knows when, Lee will join me. I am fine. Thank you for asking. What is up with you? Handsome, no. I mean, I don't know if I'm assuming you're handsome. You're very charming. I use charming. Oh, you're in the Zoom too? Okay, wait. Oh, admit. Okay, hold on. I don't have you on anything. Here you go. There you are. Okay, do you want to change your name? Do you want to change your name, love?
No, I'm okay.
Girl,
That's my name, so I'm good.
fuck yeah. I love you so much. Yeah. All right. Well, welcome. Whoop,
Thanks.
whoop. I got Lee here. Holy shit. You guys. Lee is the first guest. Lee, how are you?
I'm well, thanks.
How's Montreal? Oh, look at you, beautiful woman. Oh my gosh. I love you so much. How is it? How's Montreal?
It's it's good.
Have you had poutine?
No, I typically don't have poutine when I come to.
Oh, okay. All right, I
You
hear
know,
you.
I think I'm going to go just to Zoom because I'm getting an echo. So I'm going to log out of the lounge and go just to Zoom.
Understood. And you might want to go ahead and you could put the lounge on a separate screen and just mute it. And then then you could see chat if you want to. Of course, you don't have to.
I'm
But
on my phone.
oh,
So
fuck that then. You're on Zoom, baby. All right, you go for it. Just stay on Zoom and then we'll have our conversation. If anything really, really hilarious comes up, I'll let you know.
okay.
Well, I'm so glad you could join me today. I just want everyone to know, and I know I've said it before, but I'm going to fucking say it again. Lee is one of those people who has been part of this experience since the very beginning, since even before it was really formed, when we were all playing around on Twitter, trying to take down a bunch of fucking fascists and Nazis. And Lee was very much a part of that group. And so really, as the lounge even came together, or Room 206, or any of those things, Lee was there. So I'm really appreciative of having Lee in our lives, frankly. And
Oh, thanks.
she's been a great friend to me, and just a really, of course, a fantastic resource, especially of late with this frickin' situation. So, Lee, I thought maybe I would just start off by asking you kind of what's the state of the state in any, and I don't think nothing needs to be linear. This is really more like Lee gets to process. So just feel free to process, but tell me a little bit about what's happening right now in the crazy world of trade and tariffs, from your perspective, without giving details that you don't want to necessarily share.
Oh, well, I think everybody is aware of this 50% increase on steel and aluminum that went in 2 days ago. Um, I have no idea what will happen with that. I know there's a lot of pressure from US manufacturers on this, especially Canada and Mexico. Claudia Scheinbaum had a few things to say about this. Mexico up to this point has resisted doing any kind of retaliatory tariffs,
Right.
but she said if this is not resolved, that they will take action. I know, this trade is, trade and politics go together, unfortunately, sometimes. And the upcoming G7 meeting here in Canada, where President Zelensky and Claudia Scheinbaum have been invited, along with the other G7 members. So that should be an interesting conversation. I think there's some hope that they'll be able to at least potentially, negotiate the way that they did in the first round of 232, where Canada and Mexico were exempt, and then some other countries. I know Brazil has joined the conversation,
Oh.
asking for some relief as well.
Hmm.
But the one thing to keep in mind, you hear things about some relief. They had this whole thing about destacking, because
Hmm.
before, if you had a good, like say from China, it would be subject to 4 or 5 different tariffs, totaling up close to 200% on items, and that it's not sustainable.
Right. That.
So then, yeah, go ahead.
No, no. I recall you saying that is that people need to understand these things are stacked. And so, what does stacked mean when you have multiple tariffs?
So if you had, again, I'll use China as the example because that's
Yeah.
where the most of the impact is. So if you have I'll call a widget coming from China, it's subject to a section, more than likely it's subject to a section 301 tariff of 25%. And let's say that widget is made from steel, then it would also have been subject to section 232 of 25%. Once they started adding the IEPA tariffs, the International Emergency Economic, um, oh God, now Protection Act, I
Oh,
think it
right.
is, all the crazy acronyms.
Right.
The rate on China was 20% under that. Then you added the reciprocal tariffs, which those were the ones that went up to 125%. So originally, they were stacking all of those on top of each other, in addition to any general rates of duty that are already applicable, and then something very special called anti-dumping and countervailing.
Oh,
But
wow.
people were enraged by this. Um, and so they had to come up with a plan that they called destacking, where they made it so that if you were subject to the Section 232, say on auto parts, if you were subject to that, you weren't subject to any of the other tariffs under Section 232 and IEPA. But if it was from China, you did not get relief from Section 301 tariffs. So even though you'll see some things in the media that say they're offering relief, it's important to remember there are so many different tariff programs in place right now that you get relief from one, but maybe not from all of them.
Right. It just kind of erases any gain you might have gotten from some other.
Yeah, and then in this, so the thing is that everybody in the trade, we're all scurrying, trying to figure out what these things mean, so we can tell our companies what it means, and they can prepare. And in this latest 50%, they didn't, they never published anything official until 7 o'clock the night before. The tariffs went in place at midnight.
What?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just don't know.
So it makes it really difficult for businesses to plan and things like that, and to just even understand what their costs are going to be.
Exactly, because I'm thinking of managing a profit and loss, right? Managing a cost center and
Mm-hmm.
looking at your run rate, looking at your burn rate. Those are types of reports where you have to forecast what you're going to, when you're going to run out of money or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't mean to make it so simplistic, but I can think of some of the tenets of financial planning for any kind of organization. And you do need to understand what your future costs are going to be. And timing matters also.
Yeah.
Uh,
So the industry that I'm in, so I work for a European company, and we have a history producing metals, but we do all kinds of other things too. And we have, we were in the process of making some improvements to some of our facilities in North America, but when you order complex machinery, we have machinery that was ordered a year ago that we didn't plan for tariffs. And so
Right.
now our
Oh my
companies are
God.
asking, what are we going to do? But the interesting thing I just saw this morning, so I think I've chatted a little bit about, we work through an advocate in DC. We're not allowed to call them lobbyists,
Right.
but they are.
Yeah.
Um, but we had been talking to the advocates about petitioning the government for some relief for machines that are being imported to bring manufacturing back to the US. Because that's one of our businesses, that's what they do. They build assembly lines for auto plants. And I think we have 3 projects right now in North America where we've been building the machines for over a year. And now, we have to completely revamp the pricing. The customer's not happy about that. And so, we had been in discussion with them. And then this morning, there was a news item from the National Association of Manufacturers making a similar proposal. So I think what you're seeing is industry really coming together and trying to find some solutions that will allow the administration to sort of save face, but will bring some relief to companies that are really reliant on imported inputs for their manufacturing.
Wow.
So that's a good news.
That is good news and very interesting dynamic thinking about business leaders saying, listen, this is the economic environment we live in. So we have to figure it out and we'll get together behind the scenes. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. But man, I
Yeah.
just
And
yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say our advocates tend to lean a little right. So
Mm,
I didn't choose them, first of
right. Of
all.
course. Yeah, no, no,
Um,
no. That I
but
totally understand how that
but
works.
they are really good sources of information,
Mm,
and the head of the agents, the organization has a lot of inside contacts. So that's I'm willing to use them for what I can and get information out of them
wow.
and try to steer things in a way that are positive for us. But also, like I said, you know, you always have to kind of play both sides and say we support the administration's idea of bringing manufacturing back to the
Yeah.
US.
Yeah.
However,
Yeah. Realistically, yeah, that's interesting. I guess that makes a lot of sense. That you would have to deal with some of that too. And it makes perfect sense that, lobbyists are traditionally a little on the right leaning. They're
mhm,
really it's a little bit like Silicon Valley in some regards in terms of what their entire job is structured around is advocating for a certain point of view, and that's really what it comes down to. So that becomes very important. Not everyone can be an advocate or a lobbyist, so it
yeah.
takes a special
Well,
kind. But yeah, smart to use information is power. So
yeah, and um, went back and watched The Lounge the other day with our best friend Howard Lutnick, and
oh
the testimony I heard, I don't know if it was the senator or the House, but the representative from Connecticut was talking about a company that makes ball bearings in Connecticut, and
yes,
he was like,
yes.
"Oh, it's not a sourcing issue." And as I'm watching it, I'm like, "Oh my God, yes, it is," because I looked up ball bearing steel, and it's a really highly specialized chromium based stainless steel. And I looked at, who in the world makes this, and there wasn't anyone in the US that made those grades. So that's what, in the metals world, it's important, for people who don't live there like I do. It just isn't possible for the US to make every grade of steel. And, you know, the company that I work for, we have the ability to produce really wide coils. So, up to 72, even at 72 inches, which is 6 feet wide, obviously.
Wow.
And automakers really like that because they can, build trucks and make hoods and roofs without any welds.
Right. Oh,
So,
right. Yeah.
and the only other company that can do that in the primary steel world was US Steel. Well, now that Nippon is coming in, and I don't know if anybody watched the
I wanted to
handover
ask you. Good. Okay. Yeah.
of oh, we're gonna, all the decisions are gonna be made in the US and
Yep.
all this. And I'm thinking to myself, do you know nothing about how Japanese manufacturing works? Because that's not gonna happen.
No way. Are you
And
kidding me? Yeah.
and the Japanese are going to want to automate, and the US steel industry, they've always, tariffs have been in place on steel and aluminum since 2018. And prior to that, in 2001, George W. Bush tried the same thing. And if anybody's looking for a PhD subject, um, I my opinion is that those tariffs in the early 2000s had at least some impact on the 2008 economic crash, because in
Oh,
Detroit, it was, I mean, we could see it. It was dominoes falling. Small companies couldn't absorb 25% and they just went bankrupt. And that impacted all their local communities, truck drivers and restaurants and all the businesses that support those communities and those workers. So that was my first taste of how
oh, wow.
these tariffs, it takes time for them to really show up in pricing on the shelves,
Yeah.
because companies are going to spread that cost across their inventory. So it's not a 25% smack. They can kind of leverage it. But,
Interesting. There's two
and
things.
that's,
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
go ahead.
Well, there's two
No,
things I wanted to ask you about, and so so I don't forget them. One is if you can describe what you know about the Nippon and U.S. Steel kind of what the framework of the deal is, because I didn't really understand. And this goes back to the thing we talk about, which is um, this administration clearly is talking seriously about uh, um, uh, resources and minerals and other things in other countries that they want to get access to. And I just wonder how does all that fit together in the steel production piece? And I did Google when we were looking at when the steel came up around, are there plants being built? There are a few plants being built, but I don't know if that's not no if that's normal, or if that, you know what I mean, or if that's unusual. And then the other thing I wanted to ask you about, to what you were saying just now, is because I notice, I look at the price index and things, and we don't have the big jumps yet. I mean, maybe in some areas where it's not showing up on the higher level data. But I wonder what your thoughts are too around where are we at right now with this whole tariff thing, given that no deals, quote unquote, have been actually struck. And it just seems to be a little bit of a war of words. But how does that factor, just in your own opinion, not based on industry, because I know your industry is slightly different. But how do you think? Why do you think we're not seeing necessarily huge price jumps yet? So I just thought your perspective would be interesting on that. So the steel kind of framework, and then
sure. So I mean, I haven't looked that deeply into the Nippon US deal, but I'm sure I know that I think Nippon is making like an $8 billion investment,
okay.
to do some enhancements. I'm not sure the exact number. So, if
No, that's fine. But
somebody
that is that
let
what
me
they're
know.
doing? Are they helping the
Yeah.
US
And I,
based plants, or yeah.
yeah, well, and I think probably, US Steel will retain some amount of ownership. It'll be, I'm not sure if it's a complete joint venture or if, Nippon will have the majority ownership, but I'm sure it's not a 100% buyout or something like that. But I would think that would be difficult to get approved through CFIUS and things like that. Sorry, that's
Right.
the International Investment Authority. Um, but the one thing I think that will hold them back, so as I was started to say, and it went off track, which is not unusual for me.
I do
In
too. Sorry.
in 2008 or 2018, when they initially put the tariffs on steel and aluminum, um, it was supposed to, they were only going to be in place until the US steel industry was at 80% capacity. Well, they're never going to tell you that they've reached 80% capacity because they like these tariffs. It sets an artificial price floor for them. And
Right.
if the one thing I think that will create some chaos in the Nippon US relationship is that Nippon is going to want to automate and really modernize the US steel production. And the unions don't want automation because that means they lose people.
Right.
It's the same thing in the ports. That's why the longshoremen, they fight against
Yep.
automation because then they lose those roles.
Makes
So
perfect sense.
yeah, I think there will be some friction. I think in that Nippon U.S. Steel deal. I mean, I said all along, bail out the U.S. steel industry, give them what they want, you take the tariffs off, and let's move forward.
Yeah.
Because even so, in the first round of 232, importers had the option to request an exclusion. If you could prove with documentation that the specific grade of material you needed was not available in the US, you could get an exclusion. Well, we were fairly successful with that because we produce really specialized grades primarily for automotive.
Mhm.
But the US industry, and I'm not joking, they literally hired people to just watch when you posted exclusions. And it was open for public comment for 30 days. And they would wait until the 29th day and they would object to every single one of them.
Oh my God.
And USTR was very friendly with US industry,
Right.
so or commerce, not USTR. And what we excuse me, what we started to do was we would go to the people who objected and get quotes. And if they no quoted, that was our evidence that we would say, no, they declined to make it. Because they would say, yes, we can make that.
Right.
But the the bigger issue was, would they make it? Because if you're going to them, this is my ball bearing steel example. That company probably doesn't import, hundreds of thousands of tons of that material. They only need, let's say, 5,000 tons for a year. Well, US Steel or whoever, is not going to break into their line to produce a $5,000 order when they can take a 500,000 pound order,
Right.
So they'll say they can make it, but will they? And that's where you had a lot of specialty medical equipment and medical, like the instruments, that have to be very specialized stainless steel and things like that. And all of those importers really struggled to find the right material without, going bankrupt by paying tariffs.
Wow.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's good news.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah. No problem. And it just the fact of the matter is, this steel thing is actually hugely important, and because I mean, steel is basically in everything, right? Almost everything.
Definitely, definitely.
So, whether or not you're, in a specific market or something like that, housing, everything. And that just all kind of trickles down. This is going to be very interesting to watch how that particular uh, the steel thing moves through. I'm really curious to know who benefits from it. Just in terms of the structure of the deal and who's going to be doing what. Because I think of that in terms of the same thing about the chip manufacturer down in Arizona,
Hmm.
where a lot of the employees are from Taiwan. They're not
Oh,
from
and
Arizona.
chips are the next target of tariffs.
Well,
There's
that's
already a 232 on semiconductors. It's in
right,
process.
right.
And copper. And copper is a big part of data farms and things like that. So
That's
you'll see an impact there. You asked about the production in the US with regard to like rare earth
yes, yes.
resources.
Hmm.
So there are integrated mills where they start with like a slab or a primary form of steel. And then you have what they call mini mills where they start with scrap. Well, if you have an integrated mill like US Steel, you definitely need coking coal and things like that that come from outside the US. So they're impacted by that even on the import of their raw materials. Even if they bring in it, there's primary form called a slab. It's like a big chunk of steel that you melt down. And in the George W. Bush tariffs, they exempted slabs, but Trump didn't. So even the
wow.
US steel producers were hit by these tariffs with their raw material. Yeah, fun
Mess.
times.
What a
Um,
fucking mess. Yeah.
so the second point about the prices and inventory.
Mm.
So after the election, and this is if you look at any of the deficit statistics and you see that things spiked right after the election, everybody was rushing their orders to get them into inventory before the tariffs. So, like I said, it takes time for those tariffs to work through their inventory because let's say they already had 3 months on the floor and then they expedited so that they had another 6 months. So now they have 9 months worth of material without tariff.
I get it.
So it'll take them time to work through that. And for those tariffs to really show up. And they're, nobody wants to increase their prices that extremely.
No.
So they're going to try to make it as, delicate as possible for their customers. But automotive will definitely, I mean, I think you're already seeing some, increases in some vehicles, or on the other hand, they're just not producing certain vehicle platforms that won't be profitable no matter what.
So there's the rub. Supply, just like post-COVID or in COVID, when the supply chain starts to, just supply, pure up supply. Jim has or actually Neil has a question. Did Trump neglect to exempt slab on purpose, or was it incompetence?
I would suspect the second.
Okay. Fair enough. Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's pretty obvious just from, the fact that they think you can get every grade of steel in the US. I mean, it's just not feasible.
Right.
You look at, because you'll hear a lot of stuff about there is a global overcapacity in steel production. There's no doubt about that.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. And it's been, if you look at the top 10 producers of steel in the world, I think 8 of them are Chinese because, it's a state-run economy. And so everything, their industries are all subsidized and they are paid to overproduce. And, what they're producing though, it's stuff that you make garbage cans and things like that.
Right.
I think my company is somewhere in the mid-20s now as far as global steel production because we only focus on real specialty grades. We don't want to compete with China. A private company will never be able to compete with a state-owned.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's interesting. Oh my gosh, I did not realize that it was an overproduced. And it would make sense. It would make sense in terms of China too, with pure landmass, with construction, with other things, making sure that they've got, quick access to basic steel. But it does sound, I would imagine too, that the export of minerals for the specialized steel and other things is something, where would you make the most money? I.e., are you smelting your own specialized steel or whatever, or are you selling those mineral resources and generating revenue?
Oh, sure. And you asked, who would really benefit from the U.S.?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, it's really the shareholders.
Yeah.
They're the ones that push this, for better economic performance, and they think they'll get it with this infusion of cash from the fund.
That makes sense.
We'll see. U.S. Steel, the sort of the story on them is that they had a lot of under-fulfilled retirement obligations. So even though you could look at their profits, they're very profitable and they have a full order book, but it doesn't appear in their financials because they're trying to plug that hole in their pensions.
What? Oh, wow. I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah, there's a lot of funky things with that whole financing in the world of in those big pension plans, all those golden parachute.
Which makes sense when you've got industries too that are really have some pretty lucrative pension. You know what I mean? Like you retire with a full pension kind of thing. I remember my dad was in engineering and was in a similar situation with kind of the pension situation, and it was. And my experience with teacher unions is looking at the financial model of, state-sponsored teacher union or teacher pensions rather, and how to or union pensions. I tried to do the math on can you match what the union is going to be able to offer someone in terms of their pension and their retirement. So just from that simplistic economic standpoint, I can see where I didn't even factor that in. But they do. They have that's an expense, and is going to eat into things.
Hmm.
Oh, that's
And,
very
and and
interesting.
and consider, like, let's say, you have people live longer now. So you
Right.
retire at 65, and maybe before you were only expected to live another 10 years. Well, now you're
Exactly.
living another 20 years.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
so it's just that expanded
But
need to keep
I didn't even think of the economics of the pensions and the outlay of
going.
cash, basically, where yeah, that's so another factor that I don't think is top of mind all the time
But
with
in
people.
another little nugget, when we go to the law firm thing, so
Oh,
Skadden
yes,
Arps, which
yes,
is one
yes,
of the law
yes,
firms that capitulated, they are
yes.
longtime attorneys for U.S. Steel. And
Oh,
Robert Lighthizer, who was the former USTR, came from SCAD. So it's kind of a circle in that
oh,
world.
yeah. Okay, well, that kind of that's interesting.
So,
Jim, oh, go ahead.
oh, does someone have a question?
Well,
Sorry.
Jim Nalgren says copper hit $5 a pound yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, copper. So one thing on copper, and any, I know Jim and some other people in the lounge have knowledge about metals too, but I was told by my copper experts that they were at a conference last month, and the rumor is that the Section 232 decision on copper is expected by the end of this month.
Oh,
So you could see tariffs on copper as soon as, a couple of weeks from now.
oh. Oh, what is this gonna do to the housing supply? Oh,
Yeah, well, it's
I just
that and lumber and
everything. I just wonder about housing prices and what's gonna happen. And I do
and what I,
wonder. Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, what I was told as well, you hear them talking about, oh, we're going to bring copper mines and we're going to do all of this. The same experts told me that it takes, at least 10 years to get a copper mine that is actually viable of producing industrial,
Yep.
copper.
Yeah.
So it
You know,
doesn't happen overnight. And it's the same thing with aluminum.
see, there's this is one of the things that I think is not necessarily it's touched on by the economic reporting that I see, but there's not a ton of deep reporting on it, which is the reshoring. First of all, the reshoring timeframes, and the capacity to actually reshore certain industries here,
Mm-hmm.
um, and the fact that that is taken at face value by some economic reporting and not pushed farther on in terms of, well, if that's the case, if it's truly, you're going to reshore all these industries and that's what's going to bring, great revenue back to this country. um, First of all, it that tells me that this administration, and I mean that in the collective, doesn't seem to care how long it takes for this country to go through the pain while we wait for the reshoring. Number one. Number two, if it'll ever happen, because I think Max has been really great about saying, okay, well, an iPhone now costs this with tariffs. It's going to cost that with U.S. Payroll, and
Well,
yeah.
and I don't know if you saw any of the other coverage from Tim Apple, from Tim Cook.
Oh, yeah, Dim
Um,
Apple, yeah.
I saw an interesting, blurb from him that when they were talking about
Oh,
moving
the
to India,
India, uh-huh, mhm.
and the point was, I think they have something like 60,000 suppliers or some outrageous number like that of for components of iPhones,
Mhm.
but that the reason why they are in China as well as India wasn't necessarily the cheap labor, it was the number of engineers. Because the people who put iPhones together have very special technical skills. It's not just somebody you
On
grab
a
off the
line. It's
street.
not just a assembly line.
Right. And that's why India is attractive, because they have so many
Of course.
engineers as well.
That makes sense.
And that, this is, going back to aluminum, and I'm sure Neil and some of the other Canadians in the chat will have some comments on it. But aluminum is a really energy intensive material to produce, and energy in the US is way expensive. And in Canada, they are able to produce aluminum really reasonably, hydroelectric power. They make great aluminum, terrific source of aluminum for the US. So instead of, trying to prop up an industry in the US that isn't really viable, that's why we need this partnership on the continent. It's let Canada do what they do best, and
Yes.
let us do what we do best. And that's the
Yeah.
whole point of trade. It's reciprocity. And I mean, we get a fair amount of aluminum from Saudi Arabia. And I don't think people really look at Saudi Arabia as a metals producing country, but because of their access to cheap energy, they're able to produce really good aluminum as well.
Wow.
It's just
I-
really expensive to get it here because of the route you have to take. But, you know, automotive companies, high end automotive companies, will incorporate that in their pricing.
oh boy. I, d- I wonder what this time next year
Oh,
we're going to be talking about, Lee.
I don't know. I mean, it's, and the thing, so, behind that, not getting away from some of these things, one of the things that has me really concerned are the penalties and the fees they're talking about putting on foreign owned and built shipping and
mm.
ships in
Mm-hmm.
particular. So if you know anything about, to try to track back to who the actual owner is of a vessel is nearly impossible.
Yeah.
There's so many layers of LLCs and things like that. So it's almost like how are you going to determine who should be subject to these penalties or fines or whatever you're going to call them? And who's pushing to bring shipbuilding back to the US? Because I've talked to people in the shipbuilding industry in North America, and they have reached out to the US shipbuilders that still exist, and they won't quote on the business. So that's why they go to Japan and Korea. They can get, and even China, they can get their vessels built to their specifications on time. And, the US industry, from the people I've talked to, they said they didn't really seem interested in taking contracts to build large, ocean container type vessels. So if anybody in the chat knows anything about shipbuilding, I'd love to know more about
Mm.
that, where that pressure is coming from, because I haven't been able to really find someone who was willing to say, yes, we're willing to make these, bring us your business.
Right.
That has me worried because, you know, everybody's using vessels that are, either made with some material in China, built in China. So
100%.
that's what I've got my eye on.
Oh, that's very interesting. Oh, we will be watching that. And he talks about shipbuilding a lot. So
Mm-hmm.
he's obviously, somebody's whispered it in his ear.
For
That's really
sure.
interesting. Neil says aluminium from Quebec is considered the greenest on the planet because of the
Mm-hmm.
hydropower used to produce it. Oh, I
Exactly.
didn't know
Mm-hmm.
that.
Yep.
Cool. That's cool. Steel Dynamics, Jim says Steel Dynamics is the #1 producer of aluminum in the US. They just opened a huge plant in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And Steel Dynamics, so they're also a mini mill. So with aluminum, you can produce aluminum from scrap because you can use aluminum over and over and over
Oh,
again.
right. Yeah.
Steel, you can't recycle quite as many times because it does introduce impurities, but apparently
Right.
aluminum, you can get around that. The only one of, and someone in the audience, feel free to correct me on this too, but I know in our business, for aerospace, they require what they call virgin aluminum that is not made from scrap.
Right.
And there are less places in the world where they make that.
Oh,
So
wow.
you can produce a lot of aluminum from scrap, and a lot of companies do that. But as far as producing primary material, that's where you're talking about Canada, China, Russia, Germany. They all make primary aluminum.
Oof. We have 2 minutes left on this Zoom, but I can open another Zoom. But I'm not even sure what to ask next. um, Wait, there was one thing I wanted to ask. I feel like I'm under time pressure to ask it. I think Lee already talked about the machinery comes from elsewhere to build the plants. Oh, that was one
Mm-hmm.
thing I wanted to
Yeah,
ask was in thinking about the whole
Germany.
Germany. All right.
Sorry, go
Oh,
ahead. It's your
no,
question.
that's it. Yeah. Oops. Well, Mertz was there in the White House yesterday, so we'll see what happens with Germany. I don't know. I just think this is so incredible. The one thing I was gonna let's see. Oh, in terms of your thoughts, and maybe I need to open. I only have a minute left with you. But in terms of your thoughts on the automation piece and this whole look towards how AI, the boys are really
Mm.
gambling on their AI stuff, and really just what your opinion is about what you see so far in vis-a-vis manufacturing.
Well, there's I'm not seeing a lot of AI in our industry on manufacturing side, but I will tell you at the conference I was at this week, there is a ton of talk about AI in the actual customs world of, processing
Oh,
entries,
right.
importers like myself using AI to, perform audits, to do other things. And you hear all this talk about, oh, you're going to be replaced by AI. But because of what we do, there's so much subjectivity.
Mm,
It'd be almost impossible to completely replace trade professionals like myself. But what AI could be used to do is to streamline and make some processes, some redundant processes more efficient.
right.
But AI is definitely out there. There's lots of companies selling software with AI components. And so, it's definitely on the radar in the trade industry. But I think people are also taking it with a grain of salt. Like they're a little bit leery at this point.
That
But
makes sense. No, and I think the conversation we heard yesterday was really interesting around you need good people to really be rigorous around what
mm,
AI produces for you. And you hopefully that's the direction we end up going is that there's a combination of AI helping with mundane tasks, et cetera. And then there's, or doing analysis that can then be reviewed. Oh, darn it. I lost her. I'm gonna go ahead and set up another one just in case she can still join, but I don't wanna pressure her to have to join again. So don't worry about having to join again if you don't. Let's see, that's not the camera I want. Is it gonna use my camera? No, it's not. Okay, that's fine. Mm, 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 mm. I'm going to start it again just in case. Oh, there's Lee. Okay, good. You don't have to join Lee again if you don't want to. No worries. Um, oh my God. Thank you so much. My goodness. There. Okay. It's the same link, Lee. If you go back into the link, it's the same link. You should just be able to join the same meeting again. But that's fantastic. Oh, here we go. Oh, there she is. Oh my God, you're so much faster than I am. Blur. There she is. Okay. Hi, Lee. You're back. Thank you. Me and my free version of Zoom.
that's all
uh,
right. Um,
Yay. Okay, good. Go.
so I was going to add one other thing when you're talking about AI. So in my intern in my corporation, there's a lot of interest in the use of blockchain in international trade. So we've looked at a couple of different, options. We're again, we take these things very seriously. We're very risk averse in my company.
Yeah,
But
I would imagine.
so like in Egypt, though, in Egypt, their entire customs process is run by blockchain.
Wow.
That is a trend that's really picking up some attention as well.
Oh, I'm going to have to read about that. That's interesting. I didn't even think about that. Oh, wow. I wonder what the implications. I mean, there's really. I mean, I know there's a lot of good thinking about this, so it's not just such a simple question. But I do wonder about what the decentralization of blockchain and other things. Um, how. I mean, to me, it's kind of daunting because if you have so much anonymity in the wall in the blockchain and all this kind of stuff, it just feels like it's very much a way to move things around in even greater darkness. And that might just be my own misperception of the blockchain kind of thing. And but I don't know. Maybe I might just be a bit of a luddite when it comes to all of this. But I really am trying to learn what the
Yeah,
benefit
me
is.
too. I don't know. I
I
guess
mean,
I'm old school.
yeah,
I'm leery of it. My colleague, he's much more tech savvy and, he thinks it's a positive. I'm like, I'm not so sure yet.
that's so. I mean, it is the future. So I mean, I think to
Hmm.
some degree, it's just incumbent to learn as much as you can and figure out where do you need to stand in the breach, you know? Uh, I think also, I just want to note what the thing I really took away too from what you were saying earlier was I did not realize that part of the labor force issue, it has very little to do with cheap labor, quote unquote, and far more to do with the engineering talent that is needed to do those things. And that I think I don't feel like that's commonly understood. outside of people that are more knowledgeable about how what the workforce is in different countries. And when you were talking about Tim Apple, um, have you heard anything recently about his statement that he was going to do more in India versus and where that kind of fell out? I didn't really catch the end of that when he was when Trump and him were going back and forth about that.
Well, I think this was actually in media as well, but
Mm.
I had heard from some of my people in India that there were something like 5 plane loads of iPhones that were moved to India and equipment and things like that.
Oh,
So maybe they're already sort of shifting that way. And I mean, there certainly are industries where cheap labor is the motivation, and you look at something in the US like the Uyghur Forced Labor Protection Act, that, and where initially that was focused on China at the conference this week, the top focus for that now are goods coming from Malaysia. And it was
oh,
initially focused on cotton and tomatoes and things like that, but it's evolved into electronics and base metals, aerospace and automotive. There was a huge report done by, there's a woman called, her name is Dr. Laura Murphy, and she's a specialist in forced labor. She used to
yes,
work,
I know her. I know her.
yeah, oh, she's amazing. And
Yeah,
she did
I'm
work,
like, I
she
know
was
that name.
in the Biden administration, she was working at CBP to help them to
Oh
understand.
wow.
I don't know if she's still there. I have a feeling she probably would have left when
Yeah,
this
probably.
administration
Yeah.
came in. But her organization did a fascinating report on the automotive industry and called people out, called big name producers out. And that had a lot of people in my company also taking notice because they are our customers. And
Wow.
we've had to take a really hard look at our own supply chains. And in China they have made it illegal for companies like mine to go in and ask questions about their forced labor,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
do you keep their documents, all those indices
Yep.
of forced labor,
Yep.
and they've made it illegal to do that. So companies like mine are like, how do I track my supply chain if I can't track back to the raw material because it's not allowed?
Yeah.
So you've got a lot of companies that are trying to comply, um, but it's just really not possible. So we're waiting to see what happens, because this has been my fear, is that if they really want to force China's hand, that they will start to enforce that UFLPA
Mm,
much more rigorously.
that's true.
But
But no,
yeah.
they won't. You know what is so I you know that I worked in anti-trafficking and things like
Hmm.
anti-slavery. And let me tell you, I mean, I met with people at Coca-Cola about their supply chain. I understand, like, the supply chain issue is huge and very difficult to solve in every industry, frankly, because you've got artisanal producers of whatever, that they're enslaving people. I mean, you've got slavery up and down the line. And it's funny. I think I was in contact with Laura Murphy around the Uyghur situation and some fishermen in I want to say it was
Hmm.
Thailand or something.
Yeah, fishing
Where
vessels are also
yeah,
on the list of UFLPA entities.
right. Yeah, there's a huge amount of slavery inside that, well, inside that industry all over the globe, but in particular in that Southeast Asia corridor. But oh wow, that I have some, even though I'm a strong advocate, obviously, as we all are, for anti-slavery. I do understand the supply chain has been a very challenging thing to break apart, just because of the levels and the lack of supervision, and of course the lack of willingness by governments to actually do the work to oversee and to make that happen. So I'm not sure we're not close to solving that, but I hope we get closer. Yeah, she's awesome. Oh my God, yeah, Laura's awesome. Oh, that's funny. I
Mm.
haven't heard that name in a long time.
Yeah.
So what do you? what do you what do you think? What do you think? Where do you think we go from here? What is it?
So
Friday?
yeah, I'll give you. So this
Yeah.
is the advice I gave to my companies in the very beginning, because after what we went through in the first round of, you know, chaos, um, I just told people, don't freak out on every social media post, all that. Focus on keeping your businesses going. Let me and my colleague, let us sort through the tariff information. And you just have to kind of hold firm, you know. The people I feel for are the small businesses and in people who are in retail that, you know, are doing like wearing apparel. If you're a small wearing apparel, footwear, those things where your options to move the production are being limited. You know, everybody moved their production, like footwear and wearing apparel, out of China, you know, to Vietnam, to Bangladesh, to places like that. And then, you know, they come along and they put this, you know, 95% tariff or whatever it is on Vietnam because of the deficit. Well, you didn't want people to produce in China, so they moved to Vietnam, and now you're penalizing them for that as well. So I think a lot of industries are really looking at, you know, streamlining their businesses, but you know, small businesses won't be able to survive. A company like mine, I mean, I basically was told, you know, unless we're talking about like a $500 million in impact, we're going to just stay the course and pass on the tariffs to our customers wherever we can. And so big industries, I think they'll weather the storm. It's your small to medium sized companies that don't have, you know, the cash
Right.
and the credit, you know. It's my most of my experiences in automotive where you are dealing primarily with big companies.
Right.
And one of the mistakes that they made back in the early 2000s was that they didn't look out for those smaller to medium sized suppliers that are really critical. You know, you could have a supplier that all they supply is a really specialized bolt. Without
Yeah.
that bolt, you can't build the car. So, what the automakers, what we've seen them do is they are making sure those small to medium sized companies get paid first. And companies that have the financial ability to maybe have longer payment terms, they're negotiating those types of things. So that a company like mine, where we have, you know, some ability to go without being paid for, you know, 6 months,
Right.
we're willing to make that sacrifice. So there's you're seeing a lot of, I think, cooperation behind the scenes just because they don't want to
Right.
stir things up in Washington.
Well, it doesn't behoove them to do that, right?
No, no,
It
not at
really
all.
doesn't. And because it's not going to, I think the one thing I will say is that, you know, the operations leaders, et cetera, understand uh, what is going to, you know, get the most and how to keep their industry or their companies alive too. I mean, that's what you're focused on. You're not focused on you know, the argument. You're focused on the real business of day to day to try and make sure that, you know, things continue. So we have some questions. Peace Love
Okay.
says, but is Russia still a big player in the steel industry? They may have passed by other countries and they aren't so good as they were. I don't know the answers to that part. What about Russia? Do you know anything about Russia's role in steel?
So I'm sure they still do produce some steel, but here in the U.S., there's been a 200% tariff on Russian steel since 2022 after
Uh-huh.
the invasion.
Yep.
Um, the even so within metals, something that they added recently was the need to report for steel melt the country of melt and pour, and for aluminum the country of smelt and cast.
Okay.
So even if you have, like, let's say you're talking about slabs, let's say the slab comes from Russia and it goes to Brazil, and then they melt the slab and they actually make the steel. Because that primary material came from Russia, it's still subject to those tariffs. So you know, the whole thing about, oh, we didn't put any reciprocal tariffs on Russia. Yeah, because they already have these
Right.
high rates under sanction. Now, where you do, because if you look in the Census Bureau statistics, you will see imports from Russia, but there are some things that are allowed to still come in, and you know, there's always the opportunity for importers to commit fraud by reporting the wrong country of origin.
Right.
Um, but I mean, that would that would really be trade suicide. But you know, people do it because customs doesn't audit right away. Customs is usually behind
Would
on those
imagine.
kinds of things. But I mean, Russia's still, their big thing is always going to be the energy, and that
Right.
was the oil and all those things, and
Natural
that's
gas.
to generate revenue. But I'm sure they still have the capacity to produce steel. I mean, I know they do because, but one of the tricky things is that most Russian steel is sold through a trading group in Switzerland.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Is there a steel oligarch in Russia? I know
Well,
Deripaska's
Deripaska was big in
aluminium.
aluminum,
Yeah.
and then Roman Abramovich was really
Oh,
big in steel.
oh, okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's being sued, by the way.
Yeah.
Uh,
Bummer.
Bummer. Sucks to be him. Actually, it doesn't probably suck to be him very much. Oddly enough. Let's see. Wait, I had another question. Hold on. So, what in terms of? I was trying to think of employment and other things. Like,
Hey,
do
become a
you?
customs broker.
I know, right? Yeah, right. Become a customs broker. There you
Job
go,
security.
kids. Oh my gosh.
It is actually a really interesting, and I mean, I say this, so it is a little bit of a shameless
Oh
plug
no,
because we need people in the
yeah.
industry, but I mean, it's a fascinating career and you don't need a college degree. You learn on the job.
That's fantastic. Actually,
Yeah.
that is actually great advice for
And it's
people.
really good for veterans. There's a lot of benefits, a lot of scholarships for veterans to join the industry.
Oh, that's really good. Oh, we definitely need to promote that. That's really great. I'm so happy. I love hearing that. I love hearing about things like that where you can really join the industry and then
Mhm.
and grow in it. That's
But
fantastic.
I mean, you definitely are going to see. I mean, I'm sure there's already slowdowns in hiring, things like that, because it's very uncertain. We talked about it in the beginning.
Right.
When
That's the point.
companies want, they want to know what's going to happen. They
Right.
want stability, and we don't have that right now. So that's
Right.
what I mean. I think most companies are just kind of hunkering down, focusing on their business, and just trying to get through this without upsetting everything. But yeah, I'm sure there's going to be there will be job losses in certain industries when they cut back on production. I'm in automotive. You're already seeing it. A lot of layoffs in some of the facilities around Detroit. Um, somebody, I think it was yesterday's lounge. You guys were talking about Boeing.
Yeah, yeah.
Boeing is
Yes.
they're a really interesting case
What the
because
fuck is happening with them? Do you feel like someone's trying to save them? Is it
oh,
that's just me,
definitely.
right? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, they are sort of the pinnacle of US aerospace, but it's so, and I guess I'll be a little bit careful what I say
Yeah.
here, but when the FAA allowed them to do their own quality control and auditing, I mean, that was a mistake.
Yes.
And
Clearly.
and I mean, I know just from my own experience that the way that Boeing ran their quality management changed drastically in the last 10 years. So, where before it was all, in aerospace, you have to be really careful, you're supposed to be because of, the what you're building
Ultimate
and what it's
safety,
going to
yeah.
do. Um, but I know that that's also a way that, that's a place that people cut back. It's the same thing with what I do. Anything that's compliance related that doesn't generate revenue, those are the first things that they start to scale back on.
Yep.
And so that's what I suspect is that, all those things that have kind of like little piecemeal where we've, cut back on certain things. Now it's finally come home to where you're seeing what the result of that lack of
Yeah. That's it. I mean,
control.
that's a reasonable statement. I mean, that seems to be exactly what's happened.
But
I
I'm
just
I'm sure, yeah, you look into the history, there's a lot of books and there have been a lot of whistleblowers on Boeing
mm,
that have, also had met with untimely,
yes, there
ends of
have.
life.
A lot of windows.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
So
interesting.
they are an interesting case.
I just find them very interesting, and especially around this whole whatever was happening in the Middle East a couple weeks ago when he got the plane. When he got the plane and everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but didn't
Boeing
they
was
back
part
out
of that.
now?
Oh, I don't know. Well, I thought the Defense Department took the plane, but I don't know.
Okay.
It could totally not be true.
Yeah.
I think that was the last thing I heard, but it was a couple weeks ago. But I thought I heard Boeing in the mix of that whole week, not just that one deal, but just Boeing was part of something, whether it was an economic package or something like that. I can't recall. But yeah, what an interesting, that's a company that deserves a little more scrutiny.
Well, we can talk offline sometime about
yeah.
more stuff.
I would like to do that. Yeah, I would like to get the real down and dirty, but we'll do that offline, off the internet. But also from a for the gossip portion of the show, what do you think of yesterday's little meltdowns, little kitten fight? What'd you think of the kitten fight between Elmo and and Dump?
Well, I mean, it's hilarious. First of all, I mean, the black eye and all that weird stuff. But I watched Rad Pod last night too, and I have to be honest. When I first heard that, and everybody's like, "Oh, good, when we can get rid of Trump," I'm like, "No, you don't want to do that. You don't want JD Vance in there. I mean, we all know he's really the one. He's the one that I'm afraid of more than Trump.
Hell yeah.
But
Hell yeah.
I mean, it's entertaining to watch, and
I
I thought it
know.
was kind of funny that because everybody. So with Tesla, because I have a fair amount of experience dealing with them as well, and I thought it was funny that they have the most American content, and I'm like, do they?
Ooh.
I'm not so sure about that, but hey,
Oops. I mean, that's easy enough to check, I guess. Maybe not. Maybe they hide it a little bit better, but that's okay.
But even when you go, I mean, when you go to buy any vehicle, there's labeling on the vehicle that will tell you the countries that the content. It'll say U.S. content, Canada, and then it'll say all others.
Oh, really? I did not know that. Well, there you go.
American Automotive Labeling Act.
Oh, well, that's going to go away. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so 2024.
Yeah,
oh
but
my God.
I mean, I think it's especially being here in Canada. When I checked out of the hotel yesterday morning, woman was very nice. She's asking me, "Oh, are you in town for business or whatnot?" And I said, "Yeah, I work in tariff." And she looked at me. She's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." So you just have to say that one word now.
There you go. See, this is good. You might get free stuff. People might be like, "Oh, thanks for trying." Yeah.
But I mean, like I was saying earlier, when what I do, you don't get a lot of glory in this role because usually you're coming to a company with bad news. But right now, we are the most sought after people in our company. I start getting an email from the office of the CEO in Germany. I'm like, uh-oh.
Yeah, exactly. Help us.
If nothing, I mean, I always try to find the silver lining, even in the very worst situation. And because we are really having to look at our processes as importers, my hope is that, at least in my company, we come out to be more savvy importers and use more strategy instead of just always going with the lowest cost option, which usually ended up being China. That they are now seeing sort of the downstream impact of those choices, where we have been telling them for years, you have to decouple from China in some of these products.
Right.
And now we finally have the leverage to get people to understand because, big companies, change doesn't happen fast.
Right.
And especially in automotive, where this is one thing that I'm not sure a lot of people understand that, like one of my companies makes camshafts, which is a critical engine piece. And that camshaft is made with a very specialized tube. And the steel for that tube we could only get it from Europe because that's what was approved by the supplier 10 years ago. Well, to go and resource that, it would probably cost, because it's a safety critical part, there's probably $5 million of R&D and testing that would be needed before we could even approve
just to even. Yes.
So
yeah, you just don't switch out parts.
Right.
Yeah,
It doesn't happen that quickly in automotive.
absolutely.
We actually are in a discussion with another supplier. It happened started before all of this, and they told us it would take 16 months minimum to move their production.
I would imagine. I can't even imagine. I can't imagine a major company having to uproot. I just don't. It doesn't make any sense to me. And again, I go back to the fact that I think the thinking in the administration is that well, it doesn't really matter what happens in the interim because the ends justifies the means. And in their
Definitely.
mind, in their flawed math, they think that the combination of revenue from tariffs as well as I don't even know. I don't even know how they think. That oh, they're pushing the corporations trickle down again in part of this big bullshit tax package, which means that corporations pay very little in taxes. I understood that part of the legislation was that companies who are building here can expense on their whatever taxes 100% of their expenses to reshore their business here. So that lack of revenue that we make from corporations comes out somewhere, and that's where I think that the tariffs that you and I are paying in forms of new increased pricing or lack of supply and all the things that we're going to have to go through. I think that this administration views that as just, oh well, because we need to get to that point. Never mind what their plans are for stable coins and blockchain, and you know what I mean. Like I don't think we have a great understanding of what their end game is around all of that, except for greed
Yeah.
and self enrichment.
I liked the CBO's report that, these tariffs are going to reduce the deficit by $2.4 trillion in over 10 years.
Yeah,
I'm like, the companies that pay tariffs will either be bankrupt or will leave
yeah,
before 10 years. And it just, that's not even a sustainable, you know, statement to make because it won't last that long.
right. And
And
yeah,
it's, you said something else that I was thinking about. It'll come back to me.
okay.
Oh
Well,
no, what I was going to say, I have a lot of management ask me that same question. Well, what do you think the end game is? Personally, for me, I don't think they care. They want to lower the value of the dollar, make the economy unstable. I don't think they really have a plan for what these tariffs are going to do.
I
They
agree.
just know it's going to hurt.
I
And
agree.
from my years of being in manufacturing, I think if there had been a dialogue with corporate leaders to say, hey, we really want to encourage you to move production back to the US, and they gave them that tax incentive in the beginning, people would have done it. You didn't
Sure.
have to put tariffs on things. Give us a reason to come here, make it attractive for us, and we'll do it.
Right.
You
There
didn't have to take a sledgehammer to everything.
there are definitely ways to balance trade and manufacturing within the globe, right? There are
Hmm.
definitely ways to make it more beneficial to to build your product or whatever here. That's totally feasible. And I think by very nature of the fact that this is so chaotic, hi gal, so chaotic and so ridiculous, that the chaos is the point, and it's really it does obfuscate what might be happening behind the scenes on other things like the human rights, all the other stuff that we worry about on a daily basis. Hi, Anita. Um, one thing you said then made me think about something else. Um, okay, it'll come to me probably when we're not talking to each other on the, on the same. But Max, I think, had said something. Max, what did you say? Shoot. Tesla stock is zooming today. Did it do a dead cat bounce or something? Let's see. Maybe I missed it. Can't believe it. Okay, I can't find it. That's fine. Oh, the dollar. Yeah. So the other thing is, when you said something about, it's funny, Gal, because it was the dollar that she said that made me think of something. just going back to that Mar-a-Lago Accord and this whole thing about refinancing the U.S. Treasury debt, by giving 100-year bonds with zero coupons, so that you're not making interest payments every year. I mean, that's really what that. I don't know I don't know if that's been part of their negotiation scheme with different countries on their tariffs, but they did say that was part of their strategy.
Well, I just read an article this morning in a publication that's all about trade that USTR is going to be looking at the currency treatment in certain countries that go back to labeling people as currency manipulators and potentially, put tariffs on them. But I thought it was funny that, they say Germany is a currency manipulator, but Germany doesn't have their own currency anymore. So I found that interesting.
That is interesting.
It's the euro.
Right.
It's not just Germany. So I don't know if that's on the side of, how, some other indicator that they're saying they're a currency manipulator, but I just thought that was interesting. A new target for them to, put tariffs on things.
I mean, it's the moving thing, right? It's like, well, Vietnam imports stuff from China and then they sell it to us. They're finding an excuse for everything. So I'm not shocked.
And trade is a lot, like the USAID thing. The soft power is it's a big. It really helps.
Shit.
Rising tide lifts all boats, right?
Yes.
So it really is like nails down a chalkboard when I hear people say, NAFTA drove all our jobs away. There's nothing in that agreement that said you have to move. Those are decisions made by private companies. So it wasn't the free trade NAFTA really helped improve the standard of living in Mexico. It put certain regulations on things. It made it possible for people to invest there and have some stability. So, these deals and all, we're going to make 90 deals in 90 days. To have a deal that can actually survive or an agreement doesn't happen that quickly. So I would really, anything that they say, oh, we've made a deal with so-and-so, and that's going to have a big old skepticism for me.
Good to know.
It's like with the UK. I mean, they did sneak the 25% 232 in for UK in this latest announcement, but with a disclaimer that it could go up to 50% by the end of July if the UK doesn't comply with the agreement or the deal. I'll put it in air quotes. It's already in place. So, and you're seeing them say the same thing about China. They didn't hold up their side of what we discussed in Geneva and all that. So it's going to continue like that. I mean, it's Greer in Lutnick and, Bassent and, so.
Manny Moe and Jack.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh, geez. Go ahead.
So that's, I was just going to say I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I read this morning that was interesting, but it's trade will continue. I think how people trade will change. I think companies will be, again, I think a little bit more astute and maybe use more strategy when it comes to their sourcing, which isn't a bad thing. I think like I said, I try to find the silver lining, and it just we need to be a little bit more savvy in how we deal with these things.
The one good thing I've always said about chaos, even when I was running like small organizations, but the thing about chaos is change it comes out of it, and change is hard. But I think that if this forces some innovation, partnerships, I'm encouraged by seeing other countries start to trade with each other, and create new partnerships. And I believe the U.S. will come back. I do. I don't know why, but I just believe that we will become a normal country again in terms of not, just the normal dysfunction, and maybe improve it. And that this will, as Lee's been saying, her company has turned inward and said, okay, so how do we deal with this, right? Screw complaining about it. We got to deal with it. And I think that for a lot of organizations and companies, that can be a really good moment. It's painful, and it's not the way you'd like to be forced to innovate. But sometimes some organizations need that. So I'm not saying this is a good thing at all, but the kind of unintended consequence can be there can be some small positive moves in the way we do things. So hopefully that's the case. And maybe there is some attention paid to supply chains, although I fear that this only drives supply chains into greater darkness because people can just try and work around the tariff system, and that can open the door to more. So it can be a double-edged sword.
So one other thing,
Yeah.
keep an eye on, 2026 is when USMCA is scheduled to be
Oh,
renegotiated.
I didn't know that.
So there'll be a lot of discussion, I think that's that's what's been rumored is, one of the reasons why Claudia Scheinbaum's been invited to the G7 is to start, some of those preliminary discussions. Um, and that's something that we're definitely following closely. Really the big change from NAFTA to USMCA was in the automotive realm, where they made it much more difficult for automotive parts to qualify for the agreement. Um, they didn't really change much in other industries, and at this point, they have the option to say, in 10 years, we're just going to let the agreement expire completely. So there's some speculation that that the Trump administration will try to do that, but I don't know. I'm hoping that cooler heads prevail and that, as a continent, we can get back to, cooperating, especially in automotive. And, the fresh fruit and vegetables that comes out of Mexico, those things, that's, I think, where you're going to see that impact really, hit us is in those areas.
Oh, good question from Max. Will this probably kill off the just-in-time inventory management model?
That's a great question. I think automotive is very linked up with that as the way that they operate. It will probably depend on the availability of parts. If they can sustain that just in time, it may just happen naturally. If you can't get the parts, you can't keep up with just in time. Because, like a company like mine, we try to run lean. Inventory costs money. You have to have space to store the inventory. All those things are increased costs for me, which will just get passed on to the customer anyway.
Right.
So that's a really good question. That's something we'll probably have to wait and see how it
Yeah, it'd
plays
be
out.
interesting to see how it plays out. Oh, well, any final thoughts about, well, I think a great question, and you alluded to a little bit of it, is what to watch. The MCA coming up for renegotiation is one thing. The G7 is in a week or so, I think, in Canada.
I'm not sure the exact date,
Somewhere
but I
around the
know
middle
it's
of
soon.
June. Somewhere similar to where the NATO summit's going to be held, or around that same time. So that'll also be interesting. We'll
Well,
be
one of the things that I'm also interested in is the military spending and armaments.
Oh,
How you're
yes.
seeing a shift, the European Union rearming, Canada
Yes.
and the
Oh,
European Union coming together, because think about the industries that supply, like my company, we make steel. That's a great thing for us. We don't necessarily want to see, companies rearming, but if that's what they have to do, you're going to see
they're
some
a customer.
economic
Yeah.
benefits.
Right.
Some economic, where, there's been a lot of talk about in Germany, they actually approved to go into some deficit spending for that.
Yep.
But that's something that I'm also watching is, because here in the US, I mean, it's just, you've got Raytheon, you've got all these companies that, when it came to the arming of Ukraine, where people, "Oh, we're just sending all this billions of dollars." Well, no, you're not. You're actually sending them our old equipment
Right.
and pumping that money through our
To
arms
our new.
producing.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
So, all these, General Dynamics, Raytheon, these companies, they don't want to lose that advantage. So, unfortunately, the industry of war, I think, will continue.
Wow.
Um, and that's maybe not necessarily what we want to hear, but that's what I'm kind of keeping my
But
eye
it
on
also
too.
has an impact on the business.
Sure.
So yeah. So you'll see that. You'll see that impact.
Yeah, I
Oh
mean,
wow! I didn't think of that.
and you just have to be maybe make your purchasing decisions, put a little bit more time into it. Initially in automotive, I was thinking buy your cars now, but, you know, as inventories grow, you may see some, more interesting deals. And I know there was a proposal to possibly make interest on car loans tax deductible,
Oh, right.
that
Yeah, he has
to
proposed
try
that.
and incentivize purchasing of
Right.
new automobiles. But yeah, I think, the Max's point about the iPhone built in China versus here, the price impact on that, use your purchasing power, in a way that, is a little bit maybe I don't want to say conservative, but just with a little bit more thought
Yeah.
where you spend that money.
Yeah.
As
Look.
I say that as I'm, doing a house renovation
Yeah. Well, then it's top
with
of mind. Yeah.
with lumber and everything. And the funny thing
Oh,
is, my contractor was like, well, the prices are going to go up. I'm like, yeah, I work in tariffs. I
yeah.
get it.
Unfortunately, sir, I know all too well.
Yeah.
Welcome to my world.
So, but
Oh.
no, I mean, thanks for giving me the opportunity. I
Oh
mean, most
my
people are when they, it's like a chatty Cathy. You want to talk about trade? I'll talk about trade as long as you want.
girl, I am always down to clown on this one. So yeah, I think we should definitely do this more often. And thank you. Oh my God, for taking time out of your day, one day off.
Yeah,
I
no
hope you're going to
worries.
do something fun today.
Not sure. I mean, I may just kind of mill around the
Chill.
neighborhood. There's a park not far, and
Oh,
I take the subway into the city, hit a museum or something.
oh
But
yeah.
Neil and I are going to meet up tomorrow.
Oh, yay! Oh my God, I
Yeah.
can't wait. I'm so excited for you. Yay. Oh, how fun.
But if
Oh,
if and I will tell you, this place that I rented in Montreal, it's probably one of the best VRBOs I've ever rented. The host is
nice.
phenomenal. It's a great location. So if you haven't been to Montreal, I highly recommend it.
Montreal is so beautiful. And
It
really,
is.
I'm telling you, and I say it all the time, there's nothing like a summer night in old Montreal. There just isn't. It's so magical. Of
Well, we
course, I
brought the
wasn't there.
warm weather. It's
Yeah,
been
but
80, it's been really warm the last 2 days.
it is. Yeah, it kind of gets a little hot. I will say that. I've been there in summer, and it's kind of hot during the day, but the nights are just beautiful. But oh well, oops, did I? Oh, I lost her. God damn it, Lee. I talked too much and I lost you. All right. Well, I won't subject her to another 40 minutes. But Lee, I hope you're in chat. Thank you so much. Oh, wait, there she is. Wait, did she say something? No. Uh, Lee, thank you so much. I love you so much. And I hope you have the best time. Wait, is she there? Reclaiming my time. Yeah. Where is she? Oh, there she is. Lee, thank you. 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 This has been very educational, and I am so grateful for your time and so grateful for your knowledge and so grateful for your friendship. And I just thank you. Thank you. And I will do this anytime you want to do it. Anytime you want to come on and just, I don't care what we talk about. So, yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That was great. That was really great. So, thank you. Thank you, Lee, for a great little, hi, Edie. How are you? Welcome. Yeah, definitely, Tom. Take a listen. I'm just so grateful. God, we have smart friends. My God, we have smart friends. I love it. I need to get my professional Zoom back because I don't want to have this 40 minutes bullshit. I want to have all the time in the world. Send me any other info loungers to fill the gaps in my knowledge. Oh, Lee says, my pleasure. I love trade and the opportunity to share with all of you. Send me any other info loungers to fill the gaps in my knowledge. Oh, you're just a love. What a love. What a love. And Adriana, I just want to say I read your message in the beginning. I love you so much, and I'm so sorry. You're having a very rough day. And I just want you to know that we all care about you very much, and we're sending you big love. We're sending you big love. Yeah, everyone's saying thanks. Oh, I shared Gal and Greg's Substack to the Discord. All right, so go to the Discord and take a read. Well, that's it for this abbreviated like Friday. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And yeah, I just love this community. Man, I just really do. Thank you so much for coming, and thanks for taking time. I just think taking time out of your day is really a gift, and I really appreciate that. I know that time is very precious. All right. So thanks everyone for coming today to this little special session. I'm so excited that it worked. Yay! I do like Lolo's Lounge with special guests. I do too. So more. Yeah. So hi, Paul J. Oh, I love you guys. All right. Well, we still have to come up with a movie for tonight. Hello. You guys are kind of slacking because I don't have a movie. I don't have a movie for tonight. I don't know what the dealio is, but our date night, you guys have to pick a movie for our date night. Have you seen The Talk? Ooh, what's that? The Trial? What trial? Wait, what? I'm confused. The Trial? Is that a movie? With Jim Stevenson? What? The Talk with Jim Stevenson. What? I don't know what that is. Butterflies, what is it? Tell me what it is. What is it? Awesome. I couldn't click on last night IDK. Well, I'll check it out. Oh, yeah. Maybe a Roy Scheider festival since we had Jaws. Should we do Fosse? Andy Warhol's Bad. I'm in. Oh, I didn't play Burn After Reading. We can do that. Birdcage? You want Birdcage? Actually, Birdcage would be good for Pride Month. I love Burn After Reading, too. That's a good movie, too. Okay, well, you guys let me know. I didn't end up playing it, Lee. You guys let me know. I know, I'm really behind, too. Yeah, if you guys just throw it in Discord what you want. Dr. Fauci, a Fosse. Do. Hartman, Birdcage. Badger says Birdcage. Says Birdcage. All right. I love Birdcage. What's the matter? Anyway, bye. What's that mean? Hartman. What's Hartman? What's Hartman? Butterflies. I don't know what you mean. What happened with Jim Stevenson on Hartman? Oh, Tom Hartman. You mean Stewartson? Jim Stewartson? Because he's been on Tom Hartman a couple times. Is that what it is? Yeah. Maybe that's what you mean. I'm so sorry. Butterflies, I know. Tom Hartman, he has a show. Yes. Tom Hartman, yes. Yes. Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, Jim's been on a couple times. Is he on again? I didn't even know. Terrible. A little obscure. Grand Canyon with Danny Glover. I love that movie. Oh my God. I love that movie, Tom. I sent you a documentary for documentary. Oh, I want that. Actually, it's funny, Gal, you said that. That's exactly the one I want for next Tuesday, Roy Cohn. We're going to do that. Okay, cool. All right. Okay, bye. All right. Thank you again for coming this morning for this very special Friday session. And thanks, Lee, again, for just being really gracious with your time and your knowledge and your energy. And I will see you all guys tonight on Discord, and then I'll see you tomorrow night in the lounge because we're going to do some fucking trivia. What I do. Everything, gal. No. I love you guys. Such a terrible man. Oh, Roy Cohn is such a terrible man. He is. It's true. All right. Have a great Friday. I'll see you tonight. I'll see you tomorrow night. And all of those things. All right. Whoop, whoop. Love you.